Introducing our host, Fred Swaniker, in conversations with iconic global leaders. Welcome to The Pathway.
Greetings. My name is Fred Swaniker, and I'm the founder of The Room. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome you to The Pathway. As Room members, You are the world's most ambitious doers, the innovators, disruptors, entrepreneurs, and leaders who will shape the world. And here in the room, we challenge you to do more with the opportunities and skills you have and to solve the world's toughest problems. This conversation series, The Pathway, aims to demystify the road to success. We will uncover the milestones, failures, relationships, and untold serendipity that has enabled the trajectory of some of the world's greatest leaders. And our hope is that it will give you some insight to help you craft your own journey of impact. It gives me great pleasure to welcome our guest, Roshni Nadar, to The Pathway. Roshni is a dear friend and someone I admire very much. She's currently the CEO and Executive Director of the 9.9 billion HCL Technologies and the first woman to lead a listed IT company in India. Aside from her work leading HCL, Roshni is passionate about wildlife conservation, which led her to establish the Habitats Trust in 2018. The foundation works towards protecting India's natural habitats and its indigenous species. Roshni has an MBA from the Kellogg School of Management, where she was awarded the Dean's Distinguished Service Award. And early on in her career, Roshni worked as a news producer, first for Sky News UK, and she has also worked at CNBC and at CNN America. Roshni is also a trustee of the Shiv Nadar Foundation, which is committed to the process of nation building in India by driving transformative leadership through education. And she's the chairperson of Vidyajan Leadership Academy, a leadership academy for the economically underprivileged in India. I visited that school about 8 years ago, and I can tell you I was blown away by the incredible young talent that I met there. Her list of accolades is too many to mention, but just a few. Roshni was recognized by the World Economic Forum as a young global leader. In 2017, Vogue India named her Philanthropist of the Year. Forbes magazine has listed her in the world's 100 most powerful women for the last 3 years in a row. 2019, she was recognized by Horasis, an internationally renowned think tank, as Indian Business Leader of the Year. And this year, 2020, Forbes has featured her amongst the 25 most powerful businesswomen in Asia. So clearly, a real honor for us to be able to engage in a dialogue with Roshni today. Roshni, welcome and great to see you again.
Thank you so much, Fred, for that generous introduction. And I'm truly honored to be here in conversation with you in a much more formal capacity.
Yes. Thank you again for joining us. Now, Roshni, you've been a news producer for major channels such as Sky News, CNBC, and CNN. And today, you're the CEO of one of India's leading technology companies, responsible for 153,000 employees in 50 countries. I mean, that's a huge responsibility that you have. In addition to that, you're a noted philanthropist committed to investing in education for the underprivileged and also in wildlife conservation, I just talked about earlier. So you wear, really multiple hats. But today, we want to go a little bit deeper and understand the person behind the titles. So, how would you describe Roshni, in a nutshell for us?
A mother. I think that's an important role that helps me keep perspective and grounds me. And, I was actually thinking about this, and if I was to just put it metaphorically, a Jedi. And the reason I say that is because a Jedi, because I believe there's supposed to be a certain balance in the force. And as you can see in the world today, or even in our own country, there seems to be a big imbalance. So if I can, strive to be a Jedi, and hopefully the world needs a lot many Jedis. You're a Jedi too. I think that's a good way to be. And motherhood kind of fits into that role, because I'm trying to rear two Jedis as well, for the future. And hopefully through all the work that we do, just ensure that the force is with us.
I love that. Such a wonderful description. A Jedi, a Jedi Knight leading that force of, hopefully for good. I know you're doing some really great work and trying to really unite the forces for good in the world, and both in your personal life, raising these two young Jedi Knights, and in your professional life. That's really a beautiful vision. And something that I think you are aptly described as. You became a CEO at the young age of 27. I was just reflecting. I also actually became a CEO at 27. But the organization that I started was a tiny nonprofit in South Africa at the time, and you became CEO of this huge company at that age, 27. And as if that wasn't impressive enough, you've broken multiple ceilings. Not only as the first woman to head a top Indian IT company, but also to step into what was previously a very male-dominated industry, not just in India, but really in the whole world. What have been the highlights of this journey into uncharted waters? Clearly, you're very courageous because you're a Jedi Knight. But just give us a bit of a sense of some of the highlights that you've been on this journey, and what are some of the challenges that you've faced along the way? What are some of the battles you've had to fight with your laser sword?
So I think, Fred, one of the things that when I reflect back on, and at the age of 27, when my father appointed me the CEO of HCL Corporation, which is the holding company of our listed companies. I was, of course, fresh out of business school, and quite nervous. And he said something very interesting to me. I told him, wouldn't it be better if, I worked, let's say, in the company for a certain amount of period, gotten a little bit more of experience, and then sort of, gradually moved into that role. And I think his view was that to be able to, it's a bit entrepreneurial, because he's a first generation entrepreneur. He says, to be able to lead or to be able to be in that position, you kind of have to just dive into the deep. So, he was not allowing me that luxury of growing into a role, but rather just seizing the role and then figuring out my way and figuring out how to swim. And, sometimes people think that, that means it comes to you a bit easy. But the other way to look at it as it's like a ton of bricks that come to you all at the same time. And you kind of have to learn to navigate and place them correctly on a wall to build that. So I think that it was a very unique experience. It was hard, it was tough. He's such a stalwart, and I've always, even till today, are surrounded by most people who are much older than I am, more experienced than I am. So I think that to be able to have a mindset of the willingness to learn and the willingness to really listen. So I think some of the challenges I might have had initially when I was a little younger was this need to express and this need to talk. And as you grow older, you realize that it's better to sometimes just listen and just soak in and take in, because you're surrounded by a lot more of experience. And Fred, as you described me earlier, I think what I do think I'm able to bring to the table is diversity, and diversity not because of my gender, but also my experience, which is so diverse and different. In fact, the more interestingly, when I look at my career sort of in this technology group, I think a lot of my successes are a result of my diversity, which is outside tech. So it's a bit strange. It's not in tech. So when I deeply think about whether it's the experience I've had in the foundation, or whether it's the education I've had in television, film, and media, or whether it's the kind of exposure that I've had, it's actually till I came into this world fully, it was much more outside the tech world. So I think that the challenges were all opportunities. And as I've grown from becoming the CEO of HCL Corporation, which I still am, to being inducted in the board of HCL Technologies, to then going on and assuming the role of vice chairman and then chairperson earlier this year. I think that's been a gradual process, and I've been on the board almost for 8 or 9 years. It's been an interesting journey for me because, as the youngest member of the board, I've also had the privilege to learn how a mature company such as HCL Technologies, which is the third largest IT company in the country, been around for 20 years. How do CEO transitions happen? How do leadership changes happen? My own transition from stepping into a chairperson role from a founder and someone who's been there to really grow this organization from a little seed. These are, if I just take the personal relationship aside, I think just the professional challenges and the professional learning and the growth, it's been an amazing roller coaster. The best type.
Wow, I can just imagine.
It's the best. I mean, it's the best type, right? You get scared, it takes you down the biggest dives and then takes you up again, but it's a roller coaster, right? So the scariest
Wow.
one.
The steepest roller coaster you can imagine. So it sounds like it's been baptism by fire. You were thrown in the deep end.
Totally.
As you mentioned, your
Totally.
dad, your father said, really, if you're going to learn, you better start learning. And one of the things that I really believe is that you learn best by doing. And so you were thrown in, and you had to learn by doing. And I love what you said about as well, bringing in the diversity of your experiences. One of the things I really believe is that our creativity is enhanced by the diverse experiences that we've had. So you're talking about your experiences in film and media and, work in the US and bringing all that together into this company. That's probably, I'm sure, enhancing some of the innovation that you're seeing at HCL. So very, very, and really talking as well about the importance of listening. You mentioned how you had to pause and get used to and learn how to listen better. Very, very important trait of leadership. Okay, well, so and of course, sounds like it's still very much a journey that you're on. Continuing to learn, and that's really humbling to see. So under your leadership at HCL, one of the things you really worked hard to do is to bring more women into leadership roles within the company. Why was it important that you championed this? And can you give us a sense of how far you've come in that journey?
So I think it's still a journey, and we're still evolving. But Fred, it's quite interesting. So I came from HCL Corporation and the Shiv Nadar Foundation. And since you also have such a rich history in education, the diversity numbers seem to be much more balanced. So I was coming in from an organization and coming in from schools and universities where you have a lot more women in profession, as teachers or as principals or as leaders. So, so when one gets thrown into the corporate realm, that's when you realize that the numbers are completely off, because they're not so much in education. Education seems to be doing much better. So one of the things that I did, at least, or I tried to do at least at my level, was that when I came into, for example, into the HCL Technologies board, our longest serving board member since the company was listed, even till today, has been a woman, Robin Abrams, and Robin lives out of the Bay Area. But she was the only woman director on our board. So by virtue of myself coming in, but even if I count myself out, we got in another woman director, a really eminent business person from within India. So already the board was looking a little more diverse than it was before. I think we're perhaps one of the only companies in India that actually has a formal board diversity committee. So that's something I don't think too many companies have. It's not even required by the Companies Act, or so they don't even ask for that. But we have a formal board committee. On the board committee, I sit, as well as Robin, as well as my father sits, and a lot of our discussions are around equal opportunity platforms. So, a lot of the feedback that we get, and we have some tremendous women in tech at HCL who've been around for 18 or 20 years. And they're not looking for preferential treatment. They're just looking for an equal opportunity platform. That's it. And one of the most beautiful things, Fred, has happened despite COVID is that till last year, when people would talk about flexible work hours and people would talk about work from home, it was assumed that it was the women employees. Now we're all sitting at home. We're all working from home. So in a lot of ways, those boundaries have completely dropped. So if you're productive or not productive, you're all working from home. So the measurement metrics is kind of equalized. And what I do always love to say is that at least the masters of the household at home are women. So they're probably juggling and balancing a lot better than men are, And so I think now, as the world is moving a lot more into this work from home model, or even a hybrid model, not just for the tech industry, but maybe the next normal is that the hybrid is the way it's going to be for a very long time to come. I think the opportunities for women will be that much more because you're much more in control. You also juggle a lot of other roles. So I'm actually really excited for the kind of opportunities that we can create, for a much more balanced and gender diverse organization, because some of those barriers, and by barriers I mean mental barriers as well, have kind of dropped because it's equalized.
So you're saying that this moment could actually be the beginning of a more level playing field for women in technology and in other sectors, because now the flexible work arrangements, which perhaps maybe women have maybe needed more than men because of the way society is typically structured. Now, you're going to have this more level playing field, and people will be judged by what they produce versus by their gender.
I think, and I hope so.
Yeah, no, the world definitely needs more women leaders. If you think about the countries that have handled the COVID crisis the best have all been led by women. So I think it's going to be great and it's great that you're championing this at HCL. And one of the things as well that you mentioned is how women, the diversity that you are actually bringing in from the top, even from by shaping or by reshaping your board. And I think that's a fantastic role modeling to see as well. So Roshni, here in the room, we talk about not just our successes, right? But we believe in learning from all our experiences, not only those that have gone smoothly. So what's one thing that you failed at, but which ultimately ended up propelling your success?
I was, Fred, I don't know if I can allude it to one thing, but I'll allude it to a certain, let me put it, a certain trend of mistakes, which I'm still trying to correct. So, even though I'm part of a, very large group, large group in terms of the foundations as well as the companies. In terms of the family, it's a very small family. So it's just my parents, myself, and now, Shikhar, my husband. So they're just four of us to be divided across these entire large spectrum of organizations. And one of the things that I've had to learn the hard way is really the selection of people and the selection of leaders that we have around ourselves. And I think we have faltered in the past, with some of the organizations in the groups not having selected the right leader. And by that I mean, I think there's a certain value system, and there is a certain certain way that we work, and there is a certain DNA that we'd like our organizations to have. And I think you know this as well by, leading the kind of organizations that you lead. It's very important to find people that actually have a very similar DNA and have a value system which is very similar to yours. They could be very highly qualified. They could have, been to the best Ivy Leagues and the best educational institutions, had a great career and a great CV. But I think that fit is really important. And I do believe that in the past, I have made a few errors on judgments on, some of those people, and not because there was anything wrong with them. They're perfectly meritorious people, but they're just not the right fit. And that's and that sometimes I believe can be the hardest learning, because I can say that I've made errors in our treasury and in our investments, and it's lost us a lot of money, but that is something I still think I'll be able to earn back. But when you have wrong people at the wrong time in an organization, I think the loss, you pay a couple of years in turning around, because certain cultures get set and certain ways get set. And again, this is not to say they're wrong, but they're just not you. So I think that, to me, at the end of the day, I realize for myself personally, whether today or in the past, or maybe going all the way in the future of my career, one of the hardest and toughest decisions I'm going to have to continuously be making are decisions around people, and the right people for the right time at the right place.
The right people
I don't know
for the
if
right
you think.
time at the right place. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I can completely relate
don't
to
know
that.
if,
That's yeah, I can completely relate to that. That's one of my biggest challenges as well, is just, especially when you're a values-driven organization, finding people who align with your values and beliefs, especially senior leaders, because you're right. The one mistake at the top, really ripples through the whole organization, and then trying to undo that and the impact on your culture is really difficult. So, if you figure that out, please send me the formula, because something that
I'm still figuring that out. I'm still figuring that out. But
yeah,
you
yeah.
learn and you grow, right?
Yes, exactly, and that's, we learn from some of our mistakes. So, Roshni, how would you describe your life's mission? You've achieved incredible amount of success so far, and you've still got so much more time left. How would you describe your boldest aspiration, your life's mission? What are you hoping to when you're looking back on your life, and you're smiling and saying, I really accomplished my mission? How would you describe that mission?
Oh, so I'm stretched in so many directions. But if there's one of the initiatives which is the closest to my heart, because I feel like it's my entrepreneurial venture, it's probably been the Vidyagyan Leadership Academies. And Fred, I don't know if it's going to happen in my lifetime, and I know you feel the same way about ALA as well as ALU. Is that if the Vidyagyan schools can go on to produce, and some of that shaping takes place in schools, actually, even before higher education. A future prime minister for India, or a future Nobel laureate for India. I think I would feel like I played a part in that. So to me, that's really a vision, and it takes years. Our first batch that graduated 6 years ago, so it's very new. So that's why I hope in my lifetime. But to me, if Vidyagyan can do that, then I feel it would be amazing.
I love that. So, some of them, and when I met some of the students there, I was blown away by their talent and their passion. And I agree with you that if some of them with that intellect and passion and values actually can rise to lead India, I think it could really be an amazing impact, and a great legacy that you could leave. So, absolutely, wish you the best on that mission. And you're transforming the lives of thousands of young people in India through that. So, please keep on that mission. So let's talk about another passion of yours, wildlife conservation. That's another passion that I also share. And can you talk a bit about the impact that you want to have in that sector and with the work that you're doing with the Habitats Trust?
So, Fred, the Habitats Trust was established by me and Shikhar a couple of years ago, but we've always been passionate about wildlife. But I mean, I think just first starting from the name, the Habitats Trust. So one of the things that we do realize in India is that, India has only about 4 to 5% of its natural habitats which are still intact. So even though India might have a 20 to 30% green cover also includes agriculture. So to have a natural habitat which has so significantly shrunk to under 10% is something that's extremely worrying. I think that is another reason why we see the kind of natural calamities that we do, at least in the city that I live in, Delhi. The quality of the air is a product of having less natural habitats. So I think that's where really the the Habitats Trust was born out of. And natural habitats then means indigenous species. So, as the species could be your mega mammals like your tigers and your leopards and your rhinos and your elephants, but it's also the little tiny species that most people don't hear about but are really important for the ecosystem to actually survive. So we're doing a couple of things in the Habitats Trust. The first thing that we're doing is I went back to my film roots. So I actually partnered with young wildlife filmmakers, the Gaia people, and we've produced a season which was aired on Animal Planet and Discovery, which is called On the Brink. And each episode was about 30 minutes, and it talked about one species in India, wildlife species in India, which is on the brink. And currently we have, season 2 and season 3 under production, and we hope to partner with National Geographic to have it aired in Asia Pacific soon. And so that was also bringing in, creating original content out of India, because I do believe that at least the wildlife in Africa and just the quality of content that comes out of Africa is phenomenal. And I think we need to do a much better job in India. So that was our first effort, which is to create original content, which we could, then hopefully find channels to air. Another thing that we do is that we have something called the Habitats Trust grants. And these are grants that we give to NGOs that work in wildlife conservation in India. So again, I think the idea behind this was in India, and I think in most parts of the world, the maximum amount of grant money or fundraising tends to go towards human-oriented, causes, including what we do at the Shiv Nadar Foundation as well. So education as well as healthcare, livelihood. But then what's left behind is what ends up going towards wildlife. So I thought that I would establish special wildlife grants. So, we've got 3 categories. We have a strategic partnership grant. We have a lesser known habitats and lesser known species and conservation heroes grants. So we give out grants every year. And then the third pillar of the Habitats Trust is I want to be able to do something directly on the ground along with the team. But of course, this year has thrown a lot of our plans out of the window. But unlike Africa, again, in India, all the national parks are actually owned by the government. So there's no concept of private reserves. And so it's a very different sort of way to work. But I think that if we can get the right partners on board, give them the right funding. They've been doing phenomenal work for so many years. They're unsung heroes, but they need more money to continue the good work they're doing. By way of, the muscle that HCL and the Shiv Nadar Foundation has to be able to connect with governments. We have to create, like we do at the Shiv Nadar Foundation or like we do with our educational institutions, we have to help create an ecosystem for them. So that's really the Habitats Trust exists to be able to facilitate that and to do that. And let's see how we do and where we go. But small baby steps. We're certainly not the biggest wildlife foundation in India. I mean, WWF and some of the others are much bigger. But I think what we're trying to do is something a little different. So we're looking at it much more from a, empowering the people that actually exist. Sometimes you don't need to create more people. You just need to empower the good ones that are there. Give them more wings.
So a combination of empowering some of the rising stars in conservation in India. And also I love the idea that you're talking about in terms of creating film and content around the nature that you have, because then, once people fall in love with nature through that film, then hopefully there'll be more reasons to conserve wildlife. So we're soon going to go to the audience for questions. So please let me ask, if you have any questions, please type them in the chat room, and when we have an in-studio audience, a virtual studio, and you'll be able to join in and ask your questions live on screen shortly. But before we do that, Roshni, I have one last question for you. In the room we have what we call a pathfinder. And a pathfinder serves as an ambassador, an advocate, a connector for members of the room, helping to connect them to opportunities that can further their mission. So, think of it like Jerry Maguire. You may have seen that movie. And really where every person in the room would have their own personal Jerry Maguire who works with them to accelerate their career and to achieve their mission. So, who in your life would you say has been your greatest pathfinder? Someone who's opened doors for you and really made incredible opportunities possible.
So, I mean, Fred, I have to say that would have to be both my parents. And again, and of course, it's because they're such big personalities in their own right. But it's amazing how they did it. They were, I think just giving me the right amount of access, but then letting me navigate my own way, I think allows for a lot of learning. And both my parents, a lot of people, even my mother's, actually, a lot of people don't know much about her, but she's a Commonwealth Games and Asian Games medalist. So she plays bridge for India, one of the only people that plays bridge on the open circuit. And she's the captain of her team, and she's been playing bridge for about almost 4 decades now. And then she's also the largest art collector, largest collector of Indian art, perhaps in the world. So we're going to be building a world-class museum as well. So I think that through the various exposures that both my parents have been able to give me, it's allowed for me to perhaps develop in the way that I've had. And then, I think what they've been able to do is they've been able to give me the path, but I'm supposed to be the finder. So I think they've been very, careful about that. So we give you the opportunity, you're privileged, you get the path, go find yourself. So I think it's been that sort of equation.
Yeah, that's beautiful. They've opened the path, but you've had to find yourself, because you're right. I mean, it's that whole saying of you can take a horse to the water, but you can't force the horse to drink. And really, pathfinders, can do their part. They can open doors, but if you are not ready to step in and you don't do your part and you don't, ready yourself for that opportunity, then, they can open all the doors in the world for you, but you won't go anywhere. So I think that's a really powerful point. So we're going to then move on to our next session, our Q&A, and then we'll take some interesting questions from the audience, hopefully. Okay, great. So our first question comes from Michael Ikpoke, who's joining us from Nigeria, from Lagos, Nigeria. And his question is, given the fact that you were thrown into the deep end of the ocean. Well, actually, why don't we let Michael, maybe you can come up and ask the question. Let's bring Michael up.
Hello, Roshni.
Michael,
Hi, Michael.
Yeah, go on.
Okay, good. Thanks for the discussion. Very interesting. I was just curious about the fact that, clearly you were thrown into the deep end of the ocean, something I can relate with to some extent. And I wanted to find out from you, what was possibly the most costly mistake you made in the process? And what possibly was also the biggest learning that came out of that?
So I think, Michael, at that particular point, as I mentioned before, I think the bigger mistakes that I have made, which I continue to learn from, is finding the right leaders within our organizations at the right time to lead them. So those are some things that still take a couple of years to evolve and make the changes. But I think at that time, perhaps one of the most costliest mistakes I would have made would have been in probably in our treasury investments, or in some mistakes that I made in decisions in treasury and in risk. So a lot of it, I would have to say, at that time was much more finance oriented.
Thank you. Thank you, Roshni. So there's a question from YouTube from Sandhya Velu. Velu is joining us from India. And he asks, what motivates you daily?
What motivates me daily? Again, I think my children. And the only reason I say that is because, you could be the wealthiest person in the world, but there's nothing like an 8-year-old and a 5-year-old to keep you grounded. And so I think that, that is just what keeps me absolutely grounded, motivates me every morning. What also motivates me is that, and it actually drives me quite a bit. I do take it quite seriously, and it's something that I question myself just as a human being, not even as a parent, is that am I raising the right kind of the right kind of kids? Are they going to be all right after I'm dead and gone? And by that I don't necessarily mean in terms of what they're going to inherit, but are they going to be making the right choices? And that sometimes is you have to I don't know if I'm making the right choices, but I do think that there were specific points in my own upbringing that were very specific, and some of the stuff that my parents did with me. So if I can do a bit of the same, I think that would be good. So I think that kind of motivates me every morning, keeps me going. Also, keeps me grounded. So yeah.
I love that. Nothing like an 8-year-old to keep you grounded. So our next question is from Akshay, who's joining us from Nairobi. Akshay, do you want to come up and ask your question?
Thanks very much. I hope you can hear me. Yes. Mm-hmm. So my question is, you had mentioned listening and learning are sort of the greatest leadership traits, especially when you're thrown in the deep end and you're inexperienced and you're in a room full of others who are older, more experienced, etc. So in those situations, when you're listening, you often might hear things that really challenge or contradict your own deeply held beliefs. How do you navigate that? How do you deal with that? How do you come out on the other side, learning more and sometimes even changing course or not changing course and fighting back against what you may have heard? How do you deal with that sort of situation?
So, Akshay, one of the things that I do believe is that if I'm in the room and if I'm on the table, then my point of view, and for a lack of a better word, my vote counts. So I think that all processes, especially in large organizations, are fairly democratic in nature. Sometimes you're able to drive your point of view, sometimes not. but you still hold the power of your own opinion and your own vote. So I think it's very important to exercise that. So even when I'm in a room, sometimes I'm listening and I'm learning, I'm soaking in. I may not agree with the person across the table, but I know that I will have an opportunity to voice my opinion. Sometimes I do believe that there are forums, appropriate forums to voice your opinions. Maybe that is not the right time. Maybe it's later. Maybe it's to a few significant people. Sometimes it's, to the person with who you contradict. So I think that these are some of the things that you kind of evolve and learn, but it's all about your influence is all about, I think, timing. So you have to get the timing right if you think that it's something that you want to drive.
Thank you, Roshni. Our next question comes from Nozipo Janri-Badil, who's joining us from South Africa. Nozipo, please come up and ask your question.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Fred. And thank you, Roshni, for sharing your life experience and particularly your work with us. And congratulations once again for a very successful company that you are at the helm of running. So I wanted to ask about the women in your organization. Obviously, it was lovely to hear you say that there is a committee on the board that takes care of diversity. We're now living in COVID and a lot of women are working from home, as you said. And in our country, there's been quite a lot of psychosocial impact, that COVID's had on a lot of people working from home. There's been an increase, particularly here with gender-based violence at home. So I just wondered, what kind of support do you give to the women in your company who have, who are experience some sort of psychosocial impact from working from home, particularly with the sort of, the divisions of labor in the domestic environment where they really feel the pressure of being present all the time, having to deal with kids, of the husband not going to work at 8 o'clock in the morning and coming back at 5, and they're sort of on top of each other. Just a few ideas, because we're talking a lot about it here, and I just wondered how you're managing it over in India.
All right. Thank you so much, and thank you for your kind words. So, one of the things that we actually launched 4 years ago was a group company within the company called HCL Healthcare. And it's a very interesting company because it's perhaps one of the only ones in India that actually deals with corporate healthcare. So, and what we did at HCL was, it's apart from your basic services such as dental, pediatric, we also have things like physiotherapy. We've got things like a lot of counselors across the board, and the whole idea was that employee health is absolutely critical to the productivity and to the performance of the company. And what ends up happening, even before COVID hit, was that employees are spending about 9 to 10 hours at work, which does not give them much time to not only take care of their own health, and some of them suffer from, issues that are not just physical, but also mental. And the kind of work pressure they go through and family pressure they go through. But also, now in the COVID scenario, they're also at home, as you mentioned, with, family, husbands, kids, and a lot of other responsibilities. So when HCL Healthcare was launched 5 years ago, we said we would launch it not just for our employees, but even for all their dependents. So HCL Healthcare is actually a healthcare company catered towards our 110,000 employees, which not only focuses on the employee, but as well as their dependents, which could be parents, which could be spouse, or it could be children or aunt. So this has been something that has come absolutely handy, and HCL Healthcare has not been busier than it has been during this COVID period. It's been a tremendous learning for us. All of a sudden, just in these 7-8 months since COVID hit all of us, we've done 70,000 health checkups, and these are health checkups. A lot of them are virtual, some of them are in person. Some of them are most of them are with counselors, but also providing quality outpatient healthcare access. We've had employees or their family members who've been hit by COVID. How do you provide access? How do you get them a hospital bed if they need to go into hospitals? How do you get them a ventilator? So, it's been a very interesting journey for us. And now with the vaccine coming in, it's going to be a very challenging, but I also think exciting time, because we must be one of the only players in India who's looking at corporate healthcare. And I think a lot of other companies will now be looking at the well-being of their employees. It's interesting you asked the question, because now a lot of our customers, just as employees have started working from home, no longer ask, how productive are the people who are working for me? Are they working 10 hours? Are they working 12 hours? Now they ask us questions like, how is their work-life balance? There's been a lot of questions around that. So, that's something that I would have to say is specific to our company. Maybe there are some other companies that are doing it, but I can only talk about HCL. We've launched HCL Healthcare. It's been 5 years. We've got 7 clinics or 8 clinics, and all the clinics were inside our IT campuses. So actually, the busiest period for HCL Healthcare is Saturdays and Sundays, because that's when the employees come back to campuses and they bring their families. But I think it creates, again, an ecosystem of care for the employee, which is of a completely different level. And, we've got 110,000 employees, out of which 25,000 employees actually live, all over the world. They don't live in India. So about 25 to 30,000. But a lot of them who are of Indian descent have parents who are in India and have family who's in India. So just to have a company that's there to help them provide that access to healthcare, I think is something which is quite reassuring.
Thank you.
Thank you, Roshni. So you're talking about not only thank you, Nazipa, for that great question. And yeah, Roshni, that's great to hear that you're not only supporting your employees but also their dependents. That's very powerful commitment from HCL. So our next question comes from YouTube and from Anand Pandey in India, and he says his question to you is, what is the best and the worst career decision you have ever made?
I don't know if I want to tell you the worst. The best. I think the best career decision that today I feel keeps me balanced and keeps me grounded is that even though I have a very large role that I need to play in a corporate setting towards HCL, I'm glad that I'm able to give at least 40 to 50% of my time to the foundations, because I think it keeps me quite grounded and it keeps me diverse. And that helps in my own growth. So I think that's probably the best career decision I made, and I hope to continue keeping that balance between the two roles that I juggle in the development as well as the corporate fields. And again, I think a lot of the worst decisions have, as I've mentioned before, could have been around, some of the people decisions that I've made, or some of the financial decisions I've made. I often find that the financial ones you can, you turn around from faster. The people ones take longer.
Thank you. The lasting effect of making bad people decisions. Let's remember that point. Our next question comes from Hope Mutua, who's joining us from Nairobi, Kenya. Hope, do you want to come up and ask your question, please?
Sure. Thank you so much, Roshni, for joining us. It's been really inspiring to hear your story. So my question is, if you had to write back to 18-year-old Roshni, what piece of advice would you give her?
Hope, thank you so much. I'm actually half North Indian and half South Indian. And if there's one advice I would give myself as an 18-year-old is to learn Tamil, is to learn the language. And I really mean that seriously. So I don't know if you know a lot of the Indian IT industry and the IT industry as a whole comprises of South Indians. It just so happens in this world that most of them tend to come from South India. And considering that, I come partly half from the state of Tamil Nadu. I was born and raised in Delhi, which is in North India. But I really should have learned Tamil because I think that even when sometimes I sit in our own organizations, you notice even in organizations, culturally people gravitate to each other, especially when you know the language. So while I'm culturally entrenched and I consider myself South Indian, the fact that I cannot speak the language is very embarrassing. So if I had to tell an 18-year-old, I would say that learn the language. And it's much harder to learn it right now at this age. I find it very difficult. I've tried. I got myself a Tamil tutor and my children. My children picked up much faster than I did. So it's tough.
Great. The very last question I'm going to take from the audience is going to come from Neo, she's joining us from South Africa. So Neo, do you want to come and ask your question?
Yes, thanks, Fred. Thank you very much, Roshni. My question is that I can fully relate to the importance of finding the right fit with potential partners and there being alignment of value systems. And given that it's such an intangible thing to assess with limited interactions with someone, do you perhaps have any insights to share with respect to a quick litmus test on whether there is a right fit?
Wow, that's a tough question. So I actually, one of the litmus tests that I do believe is that at the end of the day, it's not about qualifications, but good people do good business with good people. So I think that, setting up certain scenarios, depending on whether they're interviewing, let's say, for a job at HCL or whether they're interviewing at the foundation for one of the jobs, a lot of the tests, questions that I'd like to ask are a lot more people-oriented. So I think that's one of the first questions, because how would you be in a situation with, let's say, a colleague? Or how would you be in a situation, let's say, when we're in education in students, with students? Because I think eventually we all work with people. So to derive the best from people, you have to be really good with people. So I think that's number one. And number two, which I think is extremely important, especially when a person is applying for a role. I always do ask that, what does their family think of that? Because I think that to be able to have, a person has to be at peace of mind at home as well as at the workplace. In fact, the not peace of mind at home is what percolates into, issues at the workplace. I don't sometimes feel it's the other way around. It's not stress at work that goes home, but it's stress at home that comes to work. So I think it's very important for, the people that you're surrounded by, which are your family for the most part, really have a skin in the game and are really supportive of the decision that you're making. So, I always do ask that question as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So we're about to go to our very last section now. And this is one of my favorite parts of this show, where basically, I'm going to surprise Roshni, our guest, with a series of rapid questions where you have to answer the questions in less than 7 words or less. We call it the firewalk.
Oof.
Okay, so Roshni, remember you're going to answer these things very rapid, and we'll go through lots of questions. So really, what comes to mind quickly? Less than 7 words. Nollywood, Bollywood, or Hollywood?
Hollywood.
Ooh, Hollywood. All right, we've got a big Indian audience watching. Leaders, are they born or made?
Made.
Made. All right. University educated or technically trained?
University educated.
Okay. Without conservation, our world would be?
Destroyed.
All right. What is your spirit animal?
Wolf.
A wolf. Oh, wow. She's raring. Let's be careful about this wolf. 3 words to describe being a woman in leadership.
Work-life choices.
Work-life choices. Name 3 core values taught in your home growing up.
Say respect. Respect. Competitiveness. Staying grounded.
Respect, competitiveness, and staying grounded. Great. If you could have an endless supply of anything, what would it be?
I think for all the people watching from India, there was a brand while I was growing up. It still exists. It's called Nirula's. It's a fast food brand, and they have this amazing ice cream called the hot chocolate fudge. So I think the hot chocolate fudge, Nirula's hot chocolate fudge.
All right, Nirula's chocolate fudge. An endless supply of that for Roshni. If your sons were to tell us about you, they would say, "My mum is." Finish that sentence in less than 7 words.
My mom is a big Star Wars fan.
As we learned earlier, she loves the Jedi story. Rural education is important because
it has the power to create the leaders from rurally educated leaders are sons and daughters of the soil that create catalytic effects, multiplier effects.
Well, I love that. Sons and daughters of the soil that create catalytic effects in society. What is a misconception that people have about you?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't. Oh, I know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, well, if it's a misconception, yeah, very high chance you wouldn't know. Yeah. Okay. What new technology will transform the future, especially now in this COVID moment?
Wow. I don't know the specific name, but I think some extreme form of AI and virtual reality where we can all be together but not be together because we're all remote.
Some avatars and some holograms
Totally.
and those kind of things. All right, couple more. If you could get the answer to this one question, what would you ask?
what problem do men really have to have women leaders? What is the problem? What is the block?
That's a great question. Men, she's asking you, what problem do you have with women being in charge? We need
What
to
is
give
the
Roshni
block?
that
What
answer.
is,
That's a
yeah.
what is the block? Excellent question. On a scale of 1 to 10, how cool or hip are you?
10.
10. I would agree. I'm sure your kids would agree too. So, what is the lowest school grade you were ever given, and what class subject was it in?
The lowest grade?
Yes. And in
Oh,
what subject?
so I know. No, it was a freshman year in Northwestern, actually in undergrad. And Fred, I love astronomy and stars. So I decided to take a proper course in astronomy. And I did not realize that it has so much physics in it. It was so hard. I thought I was going to be watching Neil deGrasse Tyson and these amazing videos and these amazing visuals, but it was one physics formula after the other. I think I got a C or a C minus. It was so difficult. It was the hardest course I've ever taken. I still remember it. It was an amazing course. It was just so difficult.
Right. You thought you were gonna watch some cool movies about the stars, and you got some physics. So the last one. In 5 years, we will look back on 2020 and say,
It was humbling.
it was something great. Thank you so much, Roshni. Thank you for being our guest today. Thank you for indulging us in the
Thank you
firework.
so much, Fred.
It's been great to catch up with you as always, and we continue wishing you the best in all the great work that you're doing. Thank you for joining us today in the pathway.
Thank you so much, Fred. It was an honor to chat with you and an honor to be here. And I continue to learn and think about myself in many ways. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So that concludes our show. For those of you joining us on YouTube, we'll be wrapping up now. And for those of you who are in our live studio audience here on Zoom, if you can stay behind for another 10, 15 minutes, and we'll be able to engage in a quick dialogue with each other. And if you like the show, please don't forget to subscribe on YouTube.
Thank you for joining us on YouTube today. Do tune in next time and be sure to like and subscribe the Pathways channel. For our members who've joined us on Zoom, do stay on the call for more conversations